Hello and welcome to the Climbing Daily Friday Gear Show, and welcome Charlie Woodbrun. Sorry, you better have a sup of tea. We are here in the Lake District for the Arc'teryx Lakeland Revival and the Arc'teryx Big Mountain Weekend, which is all happening this weekend. But we managed to steal a few minutes with Charlie. And Charlie, we've got your trad rack laid out in front of us, and Charlie is a trad expert. Like you've got a handful of E9s, some first ascent E9s. If anyone can tell us about trad rack, you're the man. So in a kind of like, this is my car / this is my trad rack. This is Charlie's trad rack. So let's start with the obvious. You're a DMM athlete.
Yeah. A
lot of DMM kit here.
Indeed, yeah. It's I'm really happy to be sponsored by DMM. They make, in my opinion, the best trad gear out there. My trad rack is a selection of a full set of cams and a full set of wires. Like they're known separately as passive gear and active gear. So passive gear being wires where there's no moving parts, they just wedge into cracks, and the better they fit, the less likely they are to come out. Whereas active gear has kind of moving parts, so you have to like pull them to make them smaller to fit into the crack, and then the spring holds them in place, and when you fall on the force that you put on them actively holds them in place.
Well, let's start with the cams, because I'm a sucker for expensive shiny gear.
Okay.
You've got Dragon cams.
Yeah.
And these are the new models, right? So they've kind of upgraded them in the last couple of years.
Yeah, they made a few tweaks to them, minimal, but the main thing they did was they increased the width of the cam lobes just at the tips. So it increases the surface area where it's in contact with the rock, which means it provides more grip. But only at the lip of the cam lobes, so the rest of it's still the same size, so it doesn't increase weight. And the other thing they did was they took the anodizing off the tips of the lobes, again because the anodizing was a bit more slippy, so the bare alloy there is just more grippy. Yeah.
At Extendable Slings, which for me has always been so important to have on cams. For example, like the Black Diamond Camelots, I love those cams, but they don't have the slings, and that kind of annoys me a little bit. DMM's, you've got the extendable thing.
Yeah.
But, okay, and here's my bugbear. I'm a thumb loop man. Okay. Love a thumb loop. I need a thumb loop on my cans. What's your feeling about thumb loops?
ET man.
No, I just love a thumb loop.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is personal preference. A lot of people prefer the thumb loop, but again, like, you couldn't really. The DMM weren't allowed to use the thumb loop because it was patented. So this was the next best thing. But the extendable sling, in my opinion, far outweighs the benefits of the extendable sling. Far outweigh the fact that you don't have a thumb loop. Yeah.
And also the extendable sling goes kind of through the body of the cam, which makes it stronger. If you get something like the Wild Country ones, which goes through the loop, that's not as strong, right?
Yeah. So when you extend the sling, which I do all the time because it's so useful. When you pull it through like that, you obviously create a loop here, and if it's just going through the loop on the stem, then it's through a very, very tight turn, and that actually weakens the strength of the tape. This is going through a slightly broader turn, which means it doesn't go through quite such a steep curve, and means it's stronger.
Okay, one day someone will persuade me to move away from my thumb loop.
Okay.
Let's talk about nuts now. You've kind of racked them up quite nicely. We've got big, medium, small nuts, and a variety. There's some offsets, there's some normal ones. Just talk to me about your nut selection, if that's not too personal.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, it's always a trade-off between taking as much gear as you can, because more gear is better, versus taking being as lightweight as possible. And although DMM makes super lightweight gear, obviously you don't want to take more gear than you need. So my sort of starting point for most on-site climbing is to take 2 sets of wires. 3 sets would be too many, 1 set not enough, so 2 is sensible. And these days I just find it better to take 1 set of ordinary walnuts and then 1 set of offsets. Because the variety is king, really. You know, cracks come in all shapes and sizes, and so sometimes the offsets will fit better, sometimes the standard walnut will fit better. So if you've got 1 set of each, you're generally covered.
And the difference between an offset, if I hold one up, so we've got an offset here, and then a normal one, say, there's a blue one there. There you go.
Yeah.
So why is the offset an offset? What makes it an offset, and why is that useful?
So if you look at a normal walnut, it's there aren't parallel sides, but the taper on each side is symmetrical. So this way they have symmetrical taper, and then this way they have a concave and a convex curve, but there's a symmetry to it, whereas on the offsets there is no symmetry to any of it. So whether you look at it this way or this way or that way, the taper is always unsymmetrical, which means that it fits better in some cases, not all cases. But I have found more often than not the offsets fit better than the ordinary walnuts. So good that sometimes your second can't get them out, which is
Not your problem.
well, it's not a problem unless you're paying for them. But like when you're in a scary situation, it's always good to be reassured that the nut's going to come out, and if you're going to leave it behind and lose the money, you can deal with that later. Yeah,
That's fair. And talking about scary situations, very small yellow nut here.
Yeah.
Almost an
So,
RP-esque.
yeah.
You don't use that, right?
I have used it. I haven't fallen on it.
That's good.
No,
Sensible.
No. Maybe you could do that first.
It's a suggestion, Charlie. It's a suggestion. Stay away.
But stuff like that, is safety in numbers. So if you place that, you generally try and place a whole cluster of wires together, and the idea being that as a unit of gear together, it would hold a fall. But obviously, the harder and bolder routes get, the less gear there is available. And so if there was a nut spot and only that was available, it's better to have that than to have nothing.
Yeah. I've clipped grass before, so
Yeah.
I clip anything. And then moving away from quickly as well, you've colour coordinated carabiners on most things.
Yeah.
Is that just personal preference for the size of
fashionable.
that? You're fashionable.
Yeah.
I can tell.
No, it's because when you're looking down at your rack clipped onto your harness and you want to find the small wires or the medium wires or the big wires or whatever, you need to find them quickly and easily. So having the biners coloured, you know exactly which one's which. So in the old days, if you had 3 carabiners all the same colour and you were sort of fluffing around trying to find the right one, because often they're not all clipped in the right order, I know that greens are small, yellows medium, blues are large. Simple.
Blue big.
Yeah, and the same with the cams. Like, you just put the same colour biner on the coloured cams because the sizes are coloured and they're all anodised accordingly. And if there are 2 that are the same colour, they're generally opposite ends of the spectrum. So this is the biggest one actually almost the biggest one they make. This is the smallest one they make. So you're going to be hard pushed to confuse those 2, aren't you?
You're going to be really pumped to make that decision. That wrong decision, I should say. And then quick draw wise, we've got some slings out, and then you've got some normal quick draws and extendable ones.
So again, I done it where you have colour. I've got 3 different sizes. So I've got reds are the short ones, blues are the longer ones, and then greens are the extendable ones, so they're really long. Again, they're colour coordinated, so you can tell quickly and easily what length they are. The reason why you'd use different length quick draws is for when you're trad climbing, often the route might snake left and right a little bit, or it might go in a fully diagonal line, or it might come out through a big bulge or something, and quite often the actual climbing might be over here, but there might be some gear over there and some gear over there. And if you had one rope and you clipped that rope into all those pieces of gear on short quick draws, you'd have a rope that would be doing this all the time, and you'd have so much rope drag you wouldn't get more than 20 foot up. So you use double ropes to try and minimise that, but then you also minimise that by extending gear placements that may be quite far to the left or to the right or around a corner. Or quite often if you're coming through a big overhang and you've got a piece of gear at the back, if you had a short little quick draw on it and then you pull around the overhang and the rope goes up and round, and it just becomes really tight with rope drag. So you'd use maybe an extendable one where you'd clip that into the wire and then you'd take this out, pull that long, and then you've got a much longer quick draw. Okay. The benefit of an extendable one as well is that if you don't want to extend it and you've run out of short ones, you can always just use it like that as a short one.
As a normal one.
Yeah.
The whole colour carabiner for different length of quick draws is a little bit revolutionary. I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
It's such a good idea.
Stick with me, I'll sort you out.
Don't trust this man. And then we kind of got a variety of other normal stuff. So you got your slings, which are kind of standard slings. What I did want to two more things I want to chat to you about. One is the pivot.
Yeah.
Because as a belay device, I haven't used it a huge amount, but I know the advantage is when you're in guide mode, you can lower your climber more easily.
That's right.
So I've got like a Black Diamond Guide ATC thing, and it's tricky. You have to really put pressure on it.
Yeah.
And it's all about that pivot thing, that movie thing, right?
Yeah, initially it just seems like such a small difference. How could it possibly, surely it must be a gimmick. But it does actually work, believe it or not. When you're in guide mode, for those that don't know about guide mode, when you're belaying, it only refers to when you're belaying seconds. It doesn't apply to lead belaying. So when you bring someone up from below, rather than having that clipped onto your harness that way, in the normal way with the rope coming through the belay plate and through the carabiner that way, you clip this directly into your harness that way, and the rope goes through in the same way, and then you have a separate carabiner like that clips through here, and the rope goes through that.
We should, instead of getting too common, there is a very good video which I'll link in the description below about direct belays we did here last year, and that kind of goes into it super depth. Just tell us why the pivot thing.
Pivot, sorry, I'll get to the point. The pivot is when someone falls onto the plate in guide mode, or if they're just tired and they want to have a rest. Once it's loaded, it's very difficult to pay out slack and lower them down. Anyone who's ever used one will know. And as that's a pretty common thing, it's a pretty important thing to address. But with this pivot, with that hinge, what you can do is you can actually pull the plate like that when it's under load, and it allows the rope to slide through more. Obviously, holding onto the passive end of the rope, you can slide the rope through. And then if someone is quite heavy, you can actually put a carabiner into this like that, and use that as a handle to pull it like that, with that as a hinge.
Yeah.
And then you can very easily lower someone down gradually. And it doesn't even have to be when they're sitting on the rope, or the rope is on. Sometimes they just want a bit of slack, and it's quite hard to pay out slack. But you can just pull that round on the pivot hinge and pay out slack really easily.
Cool. It is genuinely good and very useful, especially if you drop your GoPro on the ledge below, which is something I've done before, and it's a nightmare to go back down. Right, last thing we're going to talk about, because we're trying to keep this all live and quite quick, we've got to get the show out, is the new Testrossas from La Sportiva.
Yeah.
Because I've only ever seen these at trade shows. We're not going to talk about how sexy they are, because obviously, but we are going to talk about is why you didn't use them today, because we've been climbing fairly easy trad climbs.
Yeah.
You were using different shoes. Why would you use
today?
Yeah. So why would you use something not high end for a V-diff?
Because this shoe is extremely tight on your feet, so it's not the most comfortable shoe. It's a very, very aggressive, high performance shoe, which is designed specifically, as you can see with the shape, for toe down, overhanging climbing on very small footholds where you need to use a lot of core strength to pull your feet in. So it's got a very aggressive heel that pushes your foot forward into the. So it's designed for overhanging, hard sport climbing and bouldering. They're definitely not designed for standing around in all day on big ledges on a V-diff, which is what we've been doing today. Yeah. And so that's why I didn't wear them. Yeah,
that's fair enough.
We're on the choice of shoe.
You were on those ledges,
things, but not for V-diff ledges.
Yeah, they are very, very sexy. I might steal them off you in a minute. Right, we're going to call it a day here, guys. Thanks for watching the Gear Show. If you want to check out any of this DMM stuff we've been chatting about today, there's a link in the description below where you can find it on the Epic TV shop. Charlie, we're going to see you soon. In fact, we're going to spend all weekend with you. So we're going to finish our beer, and we'll see you guys soon.
See ya.